"Ma'am, I need you to step aside. This lane is for passengers who actually belong here." The words came out smooth and practiced, delivered with the particular brand of weaponized courtesy that takes years to perfect. Donna Marsh did not shout them. She did not need to. The priority lane at gate G9 was quiet enough that every syllable carried, and Donna had spent 24 years learning exactly how much volume was required to make a person feel small without technically raising her voice. What Donna Marsh did not know in that moment, standing behind her boarding podium in her pressed Navy uniform with her brass name badge catching the terminal light, was that the woman she had just told to step aside had finalized the purchase of this airline 6 hours and 14 minutes ago. She did not know that the woman in the black cashmere coat had 4 months of classified audit data on a tablet in her weekender bag. She did not know that the woman had chosen this exact flight, this exact gate, this exact evening deliberately. She did not know that in the next 22 minutes, everything that Donna Marsh had built her professional identity around would be dismantled live in front of 212 witnesses and a live stream that was already climbing toward 22,000 viewers. What Donna knew or believed she knew was this: the woman standing in front of her did not look like a first-class passenger on the Apex Atlantic flagship route to London Heathrow. And in Donna Marsh's world, that was enough. Before we go any further, drop your city in the comments right now. And if you have ever been told you do not belong somewhere, you had every right to be. This story was made for you. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because what happens next at Gate G9 is going to stay with you for a long time. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport on a Thursday evening in January has its own specific texture. It is not the frantic carnival energy of a Friday afternoon or the hollow quiet of an early Monday departure. It is something in between, a working energy, purposeful, and slightly edged, populated by people who travel enough to be tired of it, but not enough to be immune to the anxiety of it. Terminal 2 stretched its long fluorescent corridors in every direction, smelling of jet fuel and chain restaurant coffee and the particular artificial lavender that the cleaning crew sprayed on the terrazzo floors every 3 hours. Gate G9 sat at the far end of Concourse G, past the magazine kiosks and the overpriced smoothie bar and the long wall of windows that looked out onto the tarmac where planes sat breathing quietly in the cold January air. This was not a gate for casual travelers. The signage made it clear Apex Atlantic Flight 712 direct service to London Heathrow, departing 9:45 p.m. The gate area had the restrained elegance of a space that knew its clientele. The seating was wider than standard, the carpet a deeper blue, the overhead monitors displaying arrival and departure information in a cleaner font than the rest of the terminal. The priority lane was marked by a low dividing rope in the same Apex Atlantic Navy, with a small brushed steel post and a sign that read, "First Class and Diamond Elite Members Only." It was perhaps 12 feet of blue carpet between the general boarding area and the jet bridge entrance. But in the economy of airport social architecture, those 12 feet represented an entire universe of assumed status. Donna Marsh had been the queen of those 12 feet for 6 of her 24 years at Apex Atlantic. She was 54 years old, a fact she wore with the particular pride of someone who believed longevity was its own kind of authority. Her dark hair was cut short and styled with the precision of someone who took visible professionalism seriously. Her uniform was pressed to a crispness that suggested she had done it herself, not trusted it to a dry cleaner. Her reading glasses hung from a lanyard at her chest, and she touched them occasionally, not because she needed them, but because the gesture made her look thoughtful and managerial. Donna was not a cruel woman by her own accounting. She was by her own accounting a thorough one. She had what she called instincts, a kind of gate-level intelligence she had developed over 2 decades of managing boarding procedures, spotting fraudulent tickets, and maintaining what she privately described as the integrity of the cabin. In Donna's world, integrity of the cabin meant something specific and unspoken. It meant a particular kind of passenger, a particular kind of presentation, a particular kind of belonging that she assessed in the first 3 seconds of an approach without conscious thought, as naturally as breathing. She was never going to examine that process. It had never cost her anything before. At 8:43 p.m., 18 minutes before boarding was scheduled to begin, Donna stood behind her podium, reviewing the manifest for Flight 712. 41 passengers in first class and Diamond Elite, a full load. She ran her finger down the list with the focused satisfaction of someone who genuinely loved her work, and she did love it in the way that people love things that give them unchecked authority. A white couple in their late 60s approached the lane, early rolling matching leather carry-ons. Donna looked up, and her face transformed immediately into warmth, real warmth, the kind she kept in a specific compartment reserved for people who arrived at the priority lane looking exactly as she expected them to. "Mr. and Mrs. Calloway," she said because she had memorized the Diamond Elite manifest. "Welcome back. London again?" Every January, the husband said with the easy pleasure of a man who has been recognized. "You will have wonderful weather this time of year," Donna said, and meant it, and upgraded their seats from rows 3 and 4 to row 2 without being asked and without noting it anywhere that would require approval. She did it because she could. She did it because they were the right kind of passenger, and making the right kind of passenger feel recognized was what separated good gate management from excellent gate management, in Donna's view. Frank Holloway passed through the gate area at 8:47, making his rounds. He was the terminal duty manager for Apex Atlantic at DFW, 57 years old, with 26 years of aviation behind him and the particular swagger of a man who had confused seniority with wisdom. His suit was one size too small across the shoulders. He carried his clipboard like a scepter. He stopped near Donna's podium, scanned the gate area with the proprietary gaze of a man surveying his territory, and gave Donna a small nod that said everything was in order without requiring any actual investigation into whether it was. Donna returned the nod. They had worked together for 11 years. They had the wordless shorthand of people who shared a set of unspoken assumptions about how the world worked and who belonged where within it. Frank moved on. Donna returned to her manifest. At the secondary desk, 6 feet to the left of the main boarding podium, Elena Vega was running the pre-boarding system check with the focused efficiency of someone who had learned very quickly that competence was her best and only protection in this environment. She was 29 years old, 11 months into her first full-time position with Apex Atlantic, and she was good at her job in the specific way that people are good at jobs they care about, and are also slightly afraid of losing. Elena had grown up in San Antonio, the youngest of 4 children, and she had put herself through 2 years of community college before landing this position after a competitive application process. She knew the operations manual well enough to quote from it. She knew the boarding protocols, the scan verification procedure, the complaint filing system, the escalation chain. She knew all of it. What she was still learning in her 11 months at Gate G9 was how much of the official procedure was real, and how much of it was a stage set behind which different rules operated entirely. She had seen things she could not explain through official channels. A woman in a hijab held at the scanner for 8 minutes while Donna ran additional verification that resolved itself the moment the woman's white husband appeared behind her. A young black man with a Diamond Elite card told his card was not reading correctly and asked to step aside while 4 passengers behind him were processed without incident. Elena had filed an informal concern once in her 3rd month. It had gone to Frank. Frank had told her that Donna had more experience in one finger than Elena had in her entire career, and that she should focus on the systems she was responsible for, and trust the people who had been doing this longer than she had been alive. Elena had not filed another concern, but she had kept watching, and on this Thursday evening in January at 8:49 p.m. she looked up from her system check and saw Donna's posture change. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A slight forward lean, a recalibration of attention. The kind of shift that happens when someone who is always scanning for something has spotted what they are always scanning for. Elena followed Donna's gaze to the far end of the priority lane approach and saw the woman coming. In the gate seating area, 12 rows of wide blue chairs held the usual cross-section of Flight 712's passenger list executives with laptops, couples with matching luxury luggage, a group of 4 friends celebrating someone's birthday with champagne from the lounge. In the third row from the aisle, Priya Santos was sitting with her legs crossed and her phone raised, filming ambient footage of the gate area for her travel blog. She had 200,000 followers and posted 3 times a week, and she had a gift for finding the interesting human detail in a scene that other people walked past without noticing. Beside her, Kevin Okafor was half watching something on his phone with one earbud in and one earbud dangling in the posture of someone who is present enough to be aware of his surroundings without being fully committed to them. He was 24 years old and had the specific alertness of someone who had grown up having to pay attention. Priya was not looking for a story tonight. She was filming the gate because she liked the light and the movement and the particular human theater of a departure area. Her phone was up. Her live feature was already running, pulling in a slow trickle of her regular viewers who tuned in when she went live without announcement. She did not know yet what she was about to document. She only knew in the way that people with a gift for observation know things before they can articulate them that something in the gate area had just changed. Naomi Caldwell walked through the gate corridor alone. No assistant, no designer luggage, no signal visible or audible that she was anyone other than exactly what she appeared to be, a woman in a black cashmere coat, dark trousers, low leather boots, a single carry-on weekender over one shoulder, moving through an airport at the end of a very long 2 days. Her natural hair was pulled back simply. She wore no jewelry except a single watch on her left wrist, a vintage piece with a worn leather strap and a face that had belonged to her father before it belonged to her. It was not expensive by the standards of the passengers in this gate area. She wore it every day anyway. She was 42 years old. She had not slept more than 4 hours in the past 48. The negotiation that had concluded at 4:07 p.m. today in a conference room on the 38th floor of a building in downtown Dallas had been 14 months in the making and had involved 3 law firms, 2 independent valuation firms, a forensic accounting team, and more coffee than any human being should consume in a calendar year. She was exhausted in the specific deep way that only sustained high-stakes work produces, the kind of exhaustion that lives behind the eyes and does not show in the posture of someone who has spent 20 years learning never to let it show. She moved through this corridor with the unhurried certainty of someone who had never needed to hurry to prove herself, which was not the same as never having been made to feel that she should. She had checked in remotely 3 hours ago. Her weekender was already cleared. The boarding pass on her phone was Seat 1A. The private forward suite on Apex Atlantic's flagship configuration, the seat she had chosen because it was the first seat, and she wanted to experience the boarding process from the front. She was not here as a passenger tonight. She was here as a diagnostician. 4 months of classified audit data lived on the encrypted tablet in her weekender bag. 30 undercover auditors had moved through Apex Atlantic's major hubs since September, documenting what the financial metrics could not capture, what the quarterly reports did not show, what the official satisfaction scores obscured. The picture they had assembled was detailed, specific, and deeply troubling. Tonight was the final data point. She had chosen this flight, this gate, this route deliberately because Gate G9 appeared in the audit files more than any other single location in the network. She was also just a tired woman who wanted Seat 1A and a glass of cold water. She rounded the final turn in the corridor and saw Gate G9 ahead of her. The priority lane, the blue rope, the podium, and behind the podium a woman in a pressed navy uniform who had already seen her coming and whose posture had already made a decision. Naomi had seen that posture before. She knew it the way she knew her father's watch, the way she knew the exact weight of a boardroom that had already decided before she opened her mouth how much authority she was going to be permitted to carry. She did not slow down. She did not speed up. She simply arrived. She approached the priority lane entrance and held out her phone, the digital boarding pass bright on the screen. Seat 1A. Her other hand held her passport. She was the only person in the priority lane. Donna looked at her. The look lasted perhaps 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, Donna's eyes traveled from Naomi's natural hair to her black coat to her leather boots and back up to her face. Donna did not look at the phone. She did not look at the boarding pass. She looked at Naomi, and she made the calculation she always made, and the calculation came out the way it always came out for women who looked like Naomi approaching lanes that were designed for people Donna had already decided looked different. "I'm sorry," Donna said with a smile that was not a smile. "This lane is for first class and Diamond Elite members only. Group boarding begins at the main podium in about 40 minutes. If you check your boarding pass, it will show your group number." Naomi did not move. "I am a first-class passenger," she said. Her voice was calm and entirely free of the defensive timbre that the moment was designed to produce. Seat 1A. Donna let out a small breath that managed to communicate without any words that she had heard this kind of thing before, and was not impressed by it. "The app sometimes sends out upgrade offer notifications," she said, and her tone had shifted to the specific patience of someone managing a misunderstanding. Someone kind enough to explain what the confused person should have already understood. Those are offers, not confirmed upgrades. If you check your original booking, you will see your assigned seat. You can ask at the main desk, and they will help you sort it out. She had not looked at the boarding pass. She had not looked at the screen. She had looked at Naomi's face and made her determination, and was now offering an explanation designed to make the determination feel like assistance. "I am not confused," Naomi said. She moved her phone slightly forward toward the scanner. "If you scan the QR code, your system will verify the seat." Donna sighed. It was a very specific sigh, heavy and theatrical, the sigh of a woman performing Patience for an audience. She glanced toward the seating area where a few early arrivals were beginning to look up from their phones. Then she removed her hand from the scanner plate and, with the air of someone making an enormous concession, gestured toward it. Naomi placed her phone face down on the scanner glass. The machine read it in approximately 1 second. The screen on Donna's side of the podium lit up in bold green lettering. "Caldwell Naomi, MS Seat 1A. First class. Status active. Diamond Elite. Priority boarding confirmed." The green was very bright in the terminal light. Elena at the secondary desk looked up from her system check and saw it clearly. Priya in the seating area, whose phone camera had drifted toward the podium during the exchange, saw the green glow reflected on the scanner surface. Donna stared at the screen. The muscle in her jaw moved once, and then her fingers went to the keyboard. She typed 4 keystrokes. The green screen cleared. In its place, a yellow flag appeared. "Secondary verification required. Booking anomaly flagged." There was no anomaly. Naomi had watched Donna's hand move to the keyboard. She had seen exactly what happened. She said nothing. She noted the time on her father's watch, 8:57 p.m. Elena, at the secondary desk, had also seen it. She was holding her pen so tightly that her knuckles had gone pale. She took one small step toward the podium. Donna's eyes found her across the 6 feet of space between them, a look that said clearly and without words, "Stay where you are." Elena stopped. Her heart was going quickly. She stood at the edge of something and could not yet find the footing to step off it. Not yet. In the seating area, Priya had straightened in her chair. She had not yet said anything to Kevin. She was watching the exchange at the podium with the focused stillness of a person who understands that something real is happening. Something that does not need embellishment or narration, something that only needs to be witnessed. She did not lower her phone. "I'm going to need to see the physical credit card used to purchase this booking," Donna said. Her voice was louder now. Not shouting, but projecting in the specific way of someone who wants the surrounding space to hear that she is being reasonable and the other person is being difficult. Naomi looked at her steadily. "The booking was made through a corporate master account," she said. "It is managed by a central accounting department in New York. I do not carry the physical card for that account. This is standard protocol for executive corporate travel." Donna tilted her head with the patient condescension of someone explaining mathematics to a child. "I understand, but company policy requires physical verification of the purchase card for high-value last-minute international bookings. It is a fraud prevention measure. I am sure you understand." What Donna did not say, but what she communicated through every register of her body language, Was the implication she had already planted and was now watering that a woman who looked like Naomi, dressed like Naomi, traveling without visible markers of status, had probably obtained this ticket through means that did not hold up to scrutiny? She did not say it. She did not have to. The implication was structural. It lived in the demand, not the words. Several passengers in the nearby seating rows had lowered their devices. The social antenna that human beings carry without knowing it had picked up the frequency of the confrontation and was pulling their attention toward it involuntarily. Naomi spoke precisely, her voice level. Identity verification under your airline's own boarding protocol requires government-issued photo identification matching the passenger manifest. That is the policy. The physical card provision applies only to accounts flagged by the Fraud Prevention Department prior to check-in. I completed check-in at the Apex Atlantic Premier Desk at 6:15 this evening. My bag is in the hold. There is no flag on this account because there is no fraud. Donna blinked. It was a small blink, barely visible, but it was the blink of someone who had not expected to have their own policy quoted back at them. She recovered quickly. I will be the judge of what the policy requires, she said. Behind Naomi, a man in a bespoke gray suit with a slim silver briefcase had joined the lane. Marcus Webb, 61 years old. Seat 1B had the unhurried ease of a man who had taken this flight many times and did not anticipate any friction between himself and the jet bridge. Donna looked past Naomi. Mr. Webb, Donna said, and her voice became warm again immediately, the way a lamp becomes warm when you flip a switch. Welcome back. Seat 1B today. London for business. As always, Marcus said pleasantly. Donna smiled and waved him toward the scanner. He scanned his pass without pause. The machine beeped its clean green note. He glanced at Naomi as he moved past her toward the jet bridge entrance. A brief look crossed his face, a flicker of something discomfort, perhaps, or recognition of something uncomfortable. He made a decision in approximately half a second, the way people make decisions they do not examine until much later. He walked down the jet bridge. Naomi watched him go. She had expected him to. She was not surprised. She had spent her entire career in rooms full of people who were not surprised by her either, who saw the situation, registered it, and protected their own itinerary. She did not blame Marcus Webb. She thought about him briefly as a data point. She took out her phone, not to call anyone, not yet. She opened her secure email application and began typing. She was creating a time-stamped record. She was documenting in real time what was happening because she had learned long ago that the difference between an injustice and an accountable injustice was often simply whether someone had written it down. She typed 8:57 p.m., Gate G 9DFW Terminal 2. Agent Marsh manually cleared valid green scan. Fabricated secondary flag. Demanded physical corporate card. Corporate card policy does not apply per standard protocol. Proceeding. She sent it to Carla Reeves, her chief of staff in New York, with a single additional line stand by. The reply came in 8 seconds ready. Naomi pocketed her phone. The 8-second response was not remarkable to her. She and Carla had built this system over 14 years of working together. It functioned with the reliability of something that had been tested many times in many different configurations. Naomi had a habit of being in situations that required documentation. She had a habit of being the person in the room that other people had already decided should not be there. In the seating area, Priya Santos had leaned very slightly forward. She whispered to Kevin, who had removed his second earbud now and was watching the podium with his full attention. Something is happening, Priya said quietly. That scanner went green. I saw it. She cleared it. Kevin said nothing. He was watching Donna's face. I'm going live, Priya said. She had already been recording. Now she shifted her stream to public, adjusted her caption to read, Something is happening at Gate G9 right now, and I cannot look away. She did not add anything more dramatic than that. She did not need to. Viewer count 12, then 40, then 190. Kevin leaned slightly toward Priya's second microphone. He did not announce himself or introduce the situation. He simply described what he saw. She scanned green. Both of us watched it happen. The system confirmed it, and the agent cleared the screen and put up a flag that wasn't there before. A comment appeared. What airline is this? Another, is this real? Another, I need to know what happens. Elena at the secondary desk had been watching the entire exchange with the focused attention of someone memorizing something. She had seen the green scan. She had seen the manual clear. She had seen Donna wave Marcus Webb through without a second glance. She had seen the fabricated flag appear on the screen. She was holding her pen in both hands now, not writing, just holding it the way you hold something when you need your hands to be doing something so the rest of you can be still. She knew what she had seen. She knew what it meant. She also knew what speaking up in this gate area, at this podium to Donna Marsh, had cost the people who had tried it before her. She thought about her health insurance. She thought about her student loans. She thought about the 11 months she had spent learning this job, and the fact that she was good at it, and that she wanted to keep doing it. She took one small step toward the podium. Donna's eyes found her again, the same silent warning. Elena stopped. She breathed. She stayed where she was. Donna turned back to Naomi. Without the card, I cannot clear the flag. I am going to need you to step to the side while I process the remaining priority passengers. Naomi did not step to the side. Then I will wait here, she said, while you call your shift manager. Donna's eyes narrowed slightly. Then she reached across the podium and picked up Naomi's passport, which Naomi had set on the counter. She opened it. She looked at the photo. She looked at Naomi's face. She typed the passport number into the terminal. Her palm remained extended on the counter, fingers spread, waiting. Naomi noted the time again. She noted that Donna had now taken physical possession of a federal document and was holding it. She noted that this was the moment the interaction had crossed from discrimination into something more legally precise. She let it happen. She was still building the record. On Priya's live stream, the viewer count read 1,400. Donna's voice had climbed half a register without her appearing to notice. It was still within the parameters of professional conversation, technically, but it was reaching now, broadcasting angled to carry to the rows of seating behind Naomi without looking like it was trying to. I have to say, Donna announced with the specific performance of a person who is making a very reasonable point to a very unreasonable audience, that I have processed thousands of first-class passengers on this route. And the verification procedure I am describing is standard. The fact that this passenger is unwilling to comply with a basic identification request is frankly a concern in itself. The implications settled over the gate area like weather. Several passengers who had been watching with neutral curiosity shifted slightly. A woman with a toddler on her lap whispered something to her partner. An older man near the aisle adjusted his reading glasses and squinted toward the podium. Naomi felt the familiar cold pressure at the back of her neck. It was not new. She had felt it in Princeton lecture halls and Wall Street conference rooms and 100 airports in between. It was the specific physical sensation of having the burden of proof transferred to your shoulders, without your consent, of being made suddenly responsible for convincing people who had already decided. She had spent 20 years developing her response to it, which was to go very still and very quiet, and let the other person keep talking. The more Donna talked, the more complete the record became. For everyone's safety. Donna continued, and she touched the word safety. The way people touch words they are using as shields, we take these flagged bookings very seriously. I am sure this passenger understands that. I am sure this passenger wants us to do our jobs correctly. Naomi looked at her. I want you to look at the scan log, she said. The log will show that my boarding pass scanned valid. I want you to look at it. The anomaly flag supersedes the initial scan, Donna said smoothly. There was no anomaly before you typed 4 keystrokes, Naomi said. I watched your hand move to the keyboard. I watched you clear the screen. I want you to pull the log and show it to me. The temperature in the surrounding 12 feet changed. Not dramatically, but it changed. The woman with the toddler had stopped whispering to her partner and was watching the exchange with open attention. The older man with the reading glasses had leaned forward. In the seating area, 2 college-age travelers had raised their phones alongside Priya's. Donna stepped out from behind the podium. It was a deliberate movement, unhurried, performed with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in this space. She positioned herself between Naomi and the jet bridge entrance, not touching Naomi, not making contact, but occupying the physical passage with her body in a way that made the obstruction clear to everyone watching. Priya's phone caught it. Kevin's narration came out low and steady. She just stepped out from behind the desk. She is physically blocking the way to the jet bridge. The boarding pass scanned green. We both saw it happen. On the live stream, 1,400 viewers, then 2,100. The comment section was moving quickly now. She's blocking her. Why isn't she just letting her through? This is wrong. This is so wrong. Someone clip this. Naomi did not step back. She stood where she was, 2 feet from Donna, and she waited. She had learned that the most disorienting thing you could do to someone performing authority was to refuse to perform the response they were scripting. Donna was expecting retreat or argument or escalating emotion. Naomi gave her none of those things. She gave her stillness. Donna's jaw set. She looked at Naomi's coat, then at her boots, then back up at her face, and she said the thing she could not unsay. "Look," she said, and her voice dropped slightly, taking on the register of someone explaining something regrettable but true. First-class passengers on this route, they present a certain way. I am not making a judgment. I am describing a pattern. I am trying to protect the integrity of the cabin. She said it while gesturing at Naomi's coat and boots. The gesture was small. The words were not. Elena, at the secondary desk, closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Kevin stopped narrating on the live stream. The comment section filled so quickly it was hard to read individual messages, but 3 words appeared in various forms across dozens of comments in the space of 5 seconds. Did she just? Priya did not lower the camera. She whispered, "Did she just say what I think she said?" The older man near the aisle said audibly to no one in particular, "Oh my God!" Naomi looked at Donna for a long measuring moment. The moment had the quality of something crystallizing. Then she said very quietly in the voice she used when she wanted to make sure every word was recorded clearly, "Write that down, word for word, because you just said it into a camera." Donna's eyes moved involuntarily to Priya's phone in the seating area, then to the 2 phones raised by the college-age travelers, then back to Naomi. For the first time, something moved across Donna's face that was not performed. It was quick and small, and she covered it immediately with composure, but Elena saw it, and Naomi saw it, and the older man with the reading glasses saw it, the first flicker of a person who has made a mistake they cannot retrieve. "Tell me, would you have stayed, or would you have walked away?" Because what happens next answers that question for every single person watching. Stay with me. Stay. In the seating area, the woman with the toddler had stood up. She did not move toward the podium. She just stood as if the act of being upright was itself a statement. A man in his 40s near the window had turned completely in his chair to face the confrontation. The gate area had stopped pretending to be engaged in anything else. Naomi took out her phone. She opened the secure email. She added 1 line and sent it to Carla Donna Marsh, Gate G9. She stated, quote, "First-class passengers present a certain way. I am trying to protect the integrity of the cabin." End quote. Document and timestamp. Then she put her phone away and looked at Donna with the calm, focused gaze of someone who has all the patience in the world and all the leverage she needs and is in no hurry to use either. Donna straightened. She had made a mistake, and she knew it, and she was not going to acknowledge it. The only move available to her now in the emotional architecture she had built was forward. She had been at this gate for 6 years. She had never been overruled. She had Frank. She had the weight of her 24 years. She was going to use all of it. She reached for the intercom phone. "This is Gate G9, she said into it. "I need Manager Holloway to come to the priority podium. I have a situation that requires senior oversight." Naomi heard the word situation. She noted it. She thought about Carla ready in New York. She thought about the 47 files in her audit report. She thought about every person who had come through this gate and been made to feel that their presence required justification. She thought about what she needed Frank Holloway to do before she made her phone call. She needed him to show her exactly who he was. She only had to wait 4 minutes. Frank Holloway walked toward gate G9 with the proprietary stride of a man moving through territory he owned, which was how Frank moved through all of Terminal 2. He had his clipboard. He had his radio on his hip. He had his 26 years of Apex Atlantic behind him, like a second spine, invisible but load-bearing. He was not rushing. Men with Frank's particular relationship to authority did not rush. Rushing implied that something had happened they could not have predicted, and Frank Holloway prided himself on predicting everything. He reached the priority podium and took in the scene in the way he always took in scenes, by looking at Donna first. Not at the situation. Not at the passenger. At Donna, because Donna's assessment of a situation was in Frank's operational logic equivalent to the situation itself. 24 years of tenure was as good as an investigation. Better actually, because an investigation took time. He did not ask what had happened. He asked, what did she do? That single question, asked in front of Naomi and Elena and everyone in the surrounding gate area, said everything. Not what is happening, what did she do? The passenger was already the subject of the complaint before Frank had heard one word of the facts. Elena, at the secondary desk, registered the question and felt something solidify in her chest. Something she would not act on yet, but would not let go of. Frank turned to Naomi. He looked at her the way Donna had looked at her, which was to say he looked at what she was wearing and where she was standing and drew his conclusions before she had opened her mouth. He said ma'am in the way that strips the word of everything it is supposed to mean. I am the terminal duty manager, he said. I understand you are causing a disruption at our priority boarding lane. I am going to need you to work with my staff here to resolve the verification issue, and I am going to need you to do it without creating a disturbance for the other passengers. I am not creating a disturbance, Naomi said. I am standing in the priority lane with a valid first-class boarding pass that your agent confirmed and then manually cleared. I have been asking her to show me the scan log for 9 minutes. She has declined. Frank looked at Donna. Donna gave him the small, precise look of someone transmitting a coded message. Frank nodded. Donna has been with this airline for 24 years, Frank said. If she says there is a flag on this booking, there is a flag on this booking. The scan log is internal airline data. Naomi said, the scan log would confirm that my boarding pass is valid. That is why I want you to look at it. Are you telling me how to run my gate? Frank said. I am telling you what the evidence would show if you chose to look at it. Frank's chest expanded slightly. This was a specific gesture of his unconscious and habitual, the physical expression of a man who responds to challenges by inflating. He said, I am going to need to see some form of supplementary identification, and I am going to need this booking verified through a secondary channel. Until that is complete, you will step to the side and wait. That is not a request. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the people watching. He registered the phones in the seating area. He did not modify his behavior. He had been at this terminal for 11 years, and the people watching had never mattered before. They had always dispersed. They had always moved on. This was how it always went. He had not yet considered the possibility that tonight was different. Naomi said, I would like you to look at the computer, Mr. Holloway. Frank said, I do not need to look at the computer. He said it with complete confidence, with the particular immunity to self-examination that 26 years of unchecked authority produces. He had made up his mind before he arrived at the podium, and the computer was not going to change his mind because he was not going to look at it. He was going to protect his gate agent because that was what he did, because it had always worked, because the structure was designed to reward exactly this kind of certainty. He reached for his radio. He called Officer Dominguez. Ray Dominguez arrived at gate G9 2 minutes later. He was 38 years old, compact and watchful, 11 years in airport security, which was long enough to have developed a very accurate reading of the specific textures of gate disputes. He had seen hundreds of them. He knew the difference between a passenger who was actually disrupting something and a passenger who was being treated as if they were disrupting something. He could read that difference in the physical evidence of the scene: who was elevated, who was calm, what the crowd was doing, which way the body language was pointing. He looked at Naomi. Calm, upright hands, visible expression controlled. He looked at Donna, flushed, rigid jaw tight. He looked at Frank, chest out, clipboard raised, performing management. He looked at the gate area. Over 200 people, most of them watching with the focused, uncomfortable attention of people watching something that is not right. He looked at Priya's phone, 12 feet away, pointed directly at the podium. He looked at 2 other phones. He made several quiet assessments in rapid succession. Then he said to no one in particular, but angled toward Frank. "Can I see the boarding pass?" Frank said with the mild irritation of a man whose authority is being processed correctly. "We have it. There is a flag on the booking," Ray said to Naomi directly. "Ma'am, can I see the boarding pass?" Naomi held out her phone. Ray looked at it. He looked at the seat number. He looked at the passenger class. He said quietly, without making it an accusation, "Did this scan green?" Donna's response was a half-second delay. Frank stepped in before she could answer. "The system flagged it after the initial scan. That is what we are resolving." Ray looked at the terminal. He could see the scan log retrieval button from where he was standing. He had seen gate agents pull scan logs before. He knew it took approximately 45 seconds. He said to Frank, "Do you want me to pull the log?" "It will show the scan history." Frank said, "That will not be necessary." Ray looked at Frank for a moment. He said nothing. But the look communicated something, and Frank received it, and the gate area received it, and Elena at the secondary desk felt it land. Frank chose to read Ray's silence as compliance. He turned back to Naomi and delivered the declaration that had been building since the moment he walked in. The declaration he had been preparing since Donna's intercom call, the one that would, in his estimation, end the situation decisively and return the gate to his control. "Given your continued refusal to cooperate with standard verification procedures and your sustained disruptive behavior toward airline staff, I am issuing you a lifetime ban from Apex Atlantic Airlines effective immediately. Your checked luggage will be offloaded from the aircraft. Officer Dominguez will escort you from the terminal." He reached across the podium as he said it. He picked up Naomi's passport. He held it. Naomi looked at the passport in Frank Holloway's hand. She looked at his face. She looked at the clipboard, the radio, the tight suit, the absolute certainty of a man who had never once paid a price for being wrong about something that cost other people everything. She said, "Mr. Holloway, put that down." He did not put it down. In the seating area, 3 people stood up simultaneously. Not coordinated, not planned. Just the instinctive response of human beings watching a federal document being withheld from its owner by someone who had no legal right to hold it. Kevin on the live stream said quietly, "He just took her passport. That is a federal document. You cannot do that to a passenger." Priya read 2 comments aloud, her voice tight. "This is illegal." And who does she need to call? Viewer count 8,700. Ray Dominguez looked at the passport in Frank's hand. He looked at Naomi. He looked at Frank. He said very quietly, "Not as an order, but as a statement of fact, Frank. That is a federal document." Frank said, "I'm aware of what it is." Ray said nothing more. But he took 1 step to the side, a deliberate step, a step that placed him no longer alongside Frank Holloway, and no longer alongside Donna Marsh, but at a slight angle to both of them in the position of someone who is present, but has chosen not to be complicit. An older black woman in the seating area who had no connection to Naomi and was simply a passenger on this flight stood up from her chair and walked to the edge of the priority lane. She did not cross it. She stood at the boundary of it and said to Donna and Frank without raising her voice, "I have been on 40 flights this year. I have never seen this done to anyone who was not a black woman traveling alone, not once." Frank turned to her. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat." She did not return to her seat. The passport in Frank Holloway's hand was a navy blue book with gold lettering and a federal eagle embossed on the cover, and the feeling of watching someone else hold it, watching someone pick it up and keep it as if it were theirs to keep, was a feeling Naomi had a long history with. Not the passport specifically, the thing it represented. She was 19 years old, first semester at Princeton. The leaves on the economics building quad were the specific orange of early October, and she had spent the walk across campus reviewing the notes for her thesis proposal, meeting the one she had scheduled with Professor Hargrove 3 weeks in advance because she knew she needed to be over-prepared. She had earned her place at this university through a full academic scholarship, the highest entrance exam score in her high school's history. She knew this. She carried it quietly, the way she had learned to carry things that other people might dismiss if she displayed them openly. She arrived at Professor Hargrove's office 7 minutes early. She sat on the bench outside his door with her folder on her lap and her notes in her head and her future or some version of it arranged neatly in front of her. She waited 40 minutes past her appointment time. When the door opened, Professor Hargrove walked out and looked past her, and his face arranged itself into welcome for the white male student who had been standing behind her for 4 minutes without an appointment, and Hargrove ushered him in with the ease of someone who had no reason to think twice about what he was doing. When Naomi stood and said, "Professor Hargrove, I have the 9 o'clock appointment." He looked at her with polite confusion and said, "Oh, I assumed you were waiting for the administrative office. It is 2 doors down." She was wearing her Princeton ID lanyard. Her name was on his appointment sheet. He had written it there himself. She said, "I am Naomi Caldwell. I have a scheduled meeting with you about my thesis proposal." He said, of course," and looked slightly past her left ear as he said it. The specific look of a person rearranging a situation without acknowledging that the rearrangement is happening. She waited another 12 minutes in the hallway, then she went in. She sat across from him in a chair that was lower than his. She opened her folder. She presented her thesis proposal, which she had spent 6 weeks developing, which cited 43 sources and proposed a methodology for analyzing the undervaluation patterns in distressed mid-tier asset acquisitions, a methodology that would 14 years later form the analytical backbone of the private equity approach that built Caldwell Partners into what it became. Hargrove read it. He read all 12 pages of it. He was quiet for 2 full minutes after he finished. Then he said, "This is excellent work. Approved." He never apologized. He never acknowledged the 40 minutes. He never acknowledged what had happened in the hallway. She had not expected him to. She was 19 years old, and she was already learning the specific grammar of rooms that do not acknowledge what they have done to the people standing in them. She did not walk away. She stayed. She made them read every word. She made them sit in the silence of 2 full minutes and let her work be undeniable. The passport in Frank Holloway's hand was the appointment sheet on Hargrove's desk. The priority lane was the hallway outside the office. The scanner's green screen, cleared by 4 keystrokes, was the look that went past her left ear and pretended she was somewhere else. She had been in this moment before in one form or another, every version of this moment for 23 years. She had never walked away from it. She was not going to start tonight. She looked at Frank Holloway with the focused, patient gaze of someone who has all the time she needs and has already written down everything that has happened. She reached into her coat pocket. She took out her phone. She dialed 1 digit on her speed dial. She was not calling her travel agent. She was not calling her lawyer. She was calling the one number that would in approximately 4 minutes make Frank Holloway understand exactly what he had done. She exhaled slowly. She waited for Carla to pick up. Priya Santos had been doing this long enough to know when a moment was real. She had filmed hundreds of hours of airport content. She had filmed delays and reunions and the quiet comedy of people eating full meals at 6 in the morning in departure lounges. She had filmed beautiful things and frustrating things and the specific human texture of transit, which was one of her favorite subjects because airports stripped away a certain amount of performance and showed you who people actually were when they were between places. She had never filmed anything like this. The clip of Frank taking the passport had been pulled from her stream and reposted before she was even aware someone had clipped it. It moved through platforms without a hashtag, without a campaign, without anyone organizing its spread. It moved because people who saw it sent it immediately to someone else with a single sentence. "Watch this. This is happening right now." Her viewer count was at 14,000 and climbing. Priya kept her camera steady on the podium on the woman in the black coat, who had not moved an inch, on the gate agent, whose face was beginning to show the specific pallor of someone who is starting to understand what they have done, on the terminal manager holding a passport that belonged to someone else. Kevin read comments steadily, his voice calm and low, selecting them with the editorial instinct of someone who understood that not all outrage was equal, and that the most important comments right now were the ones that were precise. "Someone in the comments is a former gate supervisor," Kevin said. "They are saying that manually clearing a confirmed scan and generating a secondary flag without a documented reason is a policy violation. They are saying holding a passenger's passport without written authorization from legal is a separate issue." Priya said, "Tell me more." Kevin read, "If that ticket scanned green the first time, there is a log entry. The log cannot be deleted. It is automatic. Whatever flag she generated after the fact does not erase the original scan record. That log exists. It is evidence," Priya said quietly to the camera. "You heard that? The log exists." The comment section accelerated. Someone posted a photo they had taken from the gate seating area, a clear image of Donna's name badge. Someone else posted the general customer service number for Apex Atlantic and suggested that anyone who wanted to call should call now. 3 different travel journalists with significant followings had shared the stream link. A news aggregator had picked up the clip, and then a comment appeared that made Kevin go quiet for a full 3 seconds before he read it. "I work in aviation finance. I know who that woman is. If I am right about this, that airline has just made the worst mistake in its history." Kevin read it aloud. Priya looked at the camera. She did not say anything. She let it breathe. The comment section erupted, 100 variations of the same question in 5 seconds. "Who is she? Does anyone know? What does he mean?" Kevin looked at Priya. Priya looked at the woman in the black coat at the podium and thought about what she knew about people who stand that still in moments that would make most people buckle. She thought about what she knew about people who do not explain themselves when they could easily end the situation by explaining themselves. She thought about the vintage watch, the single carry-on, the complete absence of performance. She said very quietly, not into the microphone, "She is letting them do this? She is choosing to let them do this?" Kevin said equally quietly, "Why?" Priya watched Naomi's face. "Because she needs to see how far it goes," she said. In the gate seating area, the crowd had fully organized itself around the confrontation. There were no longer any pretenses of other activity. Books were closed. Laptops were shut. People were watching with the focused attention of people who understood they were witnessing something that mattered, though most of them could not yet articulate exactly why or how much. The older black woman who had stood at the boundary of the priority lane had not returned to her seat. She was still there at the edge of the blue rope arms, loose at her sides, her presence a quiet statement that she had decided she was not willing to make privately. A flight crew from a different gate had paused in the corridor, 5 people in Navy uniforms looking into the gate area with expressions that ranged from discomfort to something closer to recognition. Kevin had stopped reading individual comments now. He was narrating what he saw, and his narration had taken on a quality that he would not fully understand until he heard it played back days later on a national news program, the quality of someone bearing witness rather than commenting, someone making a record rather than an opinion. "She has not raised her voice once," Kevin said. "Not one time in the last 22 minutes. She has answered every question. She has offered her boarding pass, her ID, her passport. She has quoted the policy back to the person who is supposed to enforce it. She has done everything right, and they are still doing this to her." He paused. "She has not raised her voice once." He did not say anything after that for a moment. He did not need to. The viewer count read 22,000. When Frank Holloway said the words "offload her luggage," Naomi felt something shift in her chest that was not fear and was not anger. It was recognition. It was the specific feeling of standing in a version of a moment she had already survived once before, a moment she had decided the first time she lived through it that she would make mean something. She was 27 years old. Caldwell Partners was 14 months old. It existed in a single room with 2 employees, herself and Carla, and a name that had no weight behind it yet except the weight Naomi was determined to give it. She had a meeting in Atlanta with a senior partner at a legacy investment firm, a man named Morrison, who had agreed in writing to discuss a co-investment opportunity that could fund the firm's survival for the next 18 months. It was the most important meeting of her professional life to that point. She had bought a first-class ticket for the first time in her life because the meeting mattered, and she wanted to arrive as someone who had already decided she belonged at the table. The gate agent at the Dallas departure for Atlanta was young, barely her age, in a uniform that was slightly too large for him. He looked at her ticket. He looked at her face. He looked at her ticket again. He said that the system was showing an anomaly on her booking. He asked her to step aside. She stepped aside. He processed 4 passengers behind her without pausing. Then he processed 3 more. When she approached the desk again, he told her the anomaly was still unresolved and suggested she check with the main ticket counter. By the time she reached the main counter and back again, the gate had closed. She missed the flight. The meeting did not reschedule. The investment did not materialize. She drove to Atlanta. 9 hours. She arrived at 1 in the morning. She slept in her car in the parking garage of the hotel she could no longer justify booking her head against the window, and the seat reclined as far as it would go, watching the concrete ceiling of the garage and thinking about what she was going to say in the lobby in the morning. In the morning, Morrison met with her in the lobby because she had called his cell phone at 7 a.m. and told him she had driven through the night to get there and she would be in the lobby at 9. He came down in his suit with his coffee, and he sat across from her in a hotel lobby chair and listened to her for 20 minutes. And at the end, he said he could not make the investment, but that she was going to make it anyway. He said, "People like you don't quit." She had not been sure if it was a compliment. She had decided to make it one. She had sat in the parking garage that night and made a decision she was going to build something large enough that the next time someone kept her off a plane, they would eventually have to reckon with what they had done. Not in the moment. Maybe not for years. But eventually, the accounting always came. She began building the financial model that year. She began studying distressed aviation assets. She identified patterns of mismanagement in mid-tier carriers with strong route networks but poor frontline culture. She noted the gap between what airlines reported in their satisfaction metrics and what their complaint logs actually contained. She began to understand that the gap itself was a kind of asset, that a company whose problems were structural and hidden and correctable was a company that could be transformed. Apex Atlantic Airlines appeared in her research that year, in a footnote, as an example of a carrier whose customer service scores had declined for 3 consecutive years without a corresponding decline in booking revenue, which suggested the dissatisfaction was being absorbed by passengers who had no better option rather than being addressed. She had written the footnote. She had started. She had come back to it eventually with 14 years of accumulated leverage. She was standing at the gate of an airline she now owned because a gate agent at a different airport had once manufactured a reason to keep her off a plane. She did not believe in accidents. She looked at Frank Holloway holding her passport. She looked at the time on her father's watch, 9:19 p.m. She looked at the jet bridge entrance behind Donna, behind Frank, behind all of it, and she thought it is time. She said quietly, "Mr. Holloway, I'm going to make one phone call." Frank Holloway had committed to this fully, and there was no version of this moment in his understanding of how things worked in which he was going to back down in front of 200 people and one of his senior gate agents and a security officer he had called himself. He had his 26 years. He had his clipboard. He had the intercom announcement already drafted in his head. He had, as far as he was concerned, everything he needed to close this situation permanently. He said it with the complete confidence of a man who has never had to consider that confidence is not the same thing as being right. You are being issued a lifetime ban from Apex Atlantic Airlines for disruptive and threatening behavior toward airline staff. Your checked luggage will be removed from the aircraft. You will be escorted from this terminal. This is not a negotiation, and this is not a discussion. He said it loudly. He said it in the voice of finality, the voice of a door being shut. The gate area received it in a silence that was not the silence of agreement. It was the silence of 200 people absorbing something that felt wrong in a way they could not fully articulate but could feel with complete certainty. The woman with the toddler said quietly, but not quietly enough, "This is not right." The man in his 40s near the window had taken out his phone. He was not live streaming. He was calling someone, his wife later, or his lawyer, or his brother, someone he trusted who needed to know what he was watching. Ray Dominguez stood at his slight angle to both Frank and Donna, and looked at the passport in Frank's hand, and at Naomi's face and at the gate area behind her, and he made a very quiet, very consequential decision. He said to Frank, "I am not going to escort this passenger from the terminal." Frank turned to look at him. The look on Frank's face was the specific expression of a man who has never had a subordinate decline him before and does not have a framework for processing what he is currently experiencing. Ray said, "She has not broken a law. She has not created a disturbance. She has been standing in the priority lane for 22 minutes. I was called to this gate to maintain security. She is not a security concern." He paused. "Frank, give her the passport back." Frank said, "You are here at my request to assist with the disruption." Ray said, "I am here as an officer of the Airport Security Division to respond to security concerns. This is not a security concern. This is a boarding dispute. If you want to make a federal call on holding that passport, you will need to contact your legal department, and they will tell you the same thing I am telling you." He did not raise his voice. He did not make it dramatic. He simply said what was true and stood in it. Frank looked at him for 3 seconds. Then he looked away. He did not give the passport back. But he stopped talking about escorting Naomi from the terminal because something in Ray's posture had communicated clearly and without embellishment that the escorting was not going to happen. Donna, for the first time since the confrontation began, looked at Elena. Elena was standing at the secondary desk with both hands flat on the surface, watching everything. Elena met Donna's look and did not look away. The usual silent warning that Donna sent in Elena's direction hit something different this time. Elena's eyes did not lower. They held. Donna looked away first. It was a small thing. It was a very small thing. But it was a crack. And Elena felt the exact weight of it, felt something in her chest that she had been building for 11 months and had not yet had occasion to use. Naomi had been watching all of this. She said to Frank in a voice that was clear and unhurried and reached every corner of the gate area without effort, "Mr. Holloway, I'm going to make one phone call. After that call, every decision you make will be about the rest of your career, not this flight. I am giving you one final opportunity to return my passport, access the scan log, and step away from this podium." Frank looked at her. Then he did something that sealed his fate as completely and irreversibly as anything else he had done that evening. He laughed. It was a short, hard sound, not a happy laugh, a dismissive one, the laugh of a man performing disdain for an audience he was certain was behind him. "One phone call," he said. "Go ahead, call your travel agent." Naomi looked at him for one final moment. She looked at him with the calm, focused gaze of someone who has gathered everything they need and is simply completing the last step of a procedure that was always going to end exactly like this. She took out her phone. She dialed 1 digit. In the gate seating area, Priya read the most recent comment aloud, her voice careful and steady. Someone in the comments just said, "I know who she is, and if I am right, this is going to be the worst night of that manager's professional life." Kevin looked at the podium. He said very quietly, "I think they might be right." The phone connected on the second ring. Naomi said, "Carla, gate G9DFW, Terminal 2. Terminal Manager Frank Holloway has taken my federal passport and is holding it without authorization. He has issued a lifetime ban under fabricated grounds. I need you to make 2 calls. Thomas first, then legal. Yes, right now." She ended the call. Total duration 18 seconds. She put the phone back in her coat pocket. She stood where she had been standing for 23 minutes in the priority lane at gate G9 in her black cashmere coat with her father's watch on her wrist and her weekender bag over one shoulder, and she waited. Frank said, "Thomas, is Thomas your lawyer?" Naomi said nothing. Frank said, "You think your lawyer is going to override a terminal duty manager's security decision?" Naomi said nothing. She looked at him with the expression of someone who has answered enough questions and is now simply allowing time to pass. It was not a cold look. It was not a contemptuous look. It was the look of someone who knows exactly what is coming and has the patience to wait for it, because she has already done the preparation and the outcome is no longer in question. The 40 seconds that followed were the most uncomfortable 40 seconds that Gate G9 had experienced in its operational history. Frank filled it with the performance of certainty. He adjusted his clipboard. He said something to Donna quietly. Donna nodded without looking at him. Elena was still standing at the secondary desk with her hands flat on the surface. In the seating area, Priya had lowered her narration to almost nothing. She was simply holding the frame. The image was enough. The woman standing still in the priority lane. The manager holding a passport. The security officer standing at his angle. The 200 people watching without looking away. Kevin read one more comment. He read it slowly, like he was turning it over. Chat is saying she is not making them come to her because she needs help. She is making them come to her because she wants them on record. He looked at Naomi's back. He said, I think that's right. The viewer count read 22,000. Then Frank's radio came alive. It was not the standard dispatch channel. It used a frequency that Frank had heard used exactly twice in his 26 years, once during a runway incursion drill, and once during an actual security event involving a suspicious package near baggage claim. It was the Executive Override channel. It was the channel that Operations Command used when the situation had moved beyond the management tier entirely. The voice on the channel was the Operations Director, and the voice was not composed. Frank, this is Operations Command. Listen to me. Do not move. Do not offload any luggage. Do not close that jet bridge. Do not escort that passenger anywhere. The CEO is in the building. His team just called. He is on his way to G9 right now. Frank, if that passenger is moved from that gate, you're done. Do you copy? The radio went to static. Frank Holloway's hand, the one holding the radio, dropped slowly to his side. He stood very still. The color was leaving his face in the specific way that it leaves the faces of people who have just understood all at once the full magnitude of the mistake they cannot take back. Donna was looking at him. Her face had gone the color of old paper. She had stopped touching her keyboard. She had stopped doing anything at all. She was simply standing behind the podium, very still, looking at the woman she had been certain 40 minutes ago did not belong in the priority lane. Elena at the secondary desk had straightened. She was watching Frank with the careful attention of someone watching a structure come apart, noting each point of failure. In the seating area, Priya said very quietly, Something just happened. The manager just got a call on a different radio. Something is coming. Kevin said, Chat, are you seeing this? The comments came so fast they were unreadable. Naomi did not turn around to look at Frank. She did not need to. She was looking at the jet bridge entrance, the blue carpeted path that led down to Flight 712 to Seat 1A to London. She straightened the strap of her weekender bag on her shoulder. She touched her father's watch, a small habit automatic, the way you touch something that grounds you. She heard Frank's radio. She had expected something like it, though she had not known the exact form it would take. She had not planned this exact moment, but she had understood in the way that people understand things they have spent months preparing for that the moment was going to come. She thought about the 47 files. She thought about the retired teacher who had been told his seat did not exist. She thought about the woman in the hijab. She thought about every person who had stood in this lane and been made to feel that their valid ticket was a question rather than an answer. She heard footsteps in the corridor coming from the direction of the executive elevator moving fast. Thomas Whitfield was running. Thomas Whitfield had not run through an airport terminal since he was 32 years old, chasing a connection in Frankfurt with a laptop bag that had just lost its zipper. He was 59 now, and he ran through Terminal 2 with the slightly wild, unguarded energy of a man whose composure had been stripped away by the specific kind of crisis that strips away composure completely. The crisis of discovering that the worst thing you feared about your own organization has just happened to the one person in the world most catastrophically positioned to witness it. His silk tie was flapping over his shoulder. His chief of staff was 4 feet behind him, talking rapidly into a phone. 2 corporate security officers flanked them at a slight jog. Thomas was the one setting the pace. Thomas was moving faster than any of them because Thomas understood with the clarity that only full information produces exactly what was happening at Gate G9. He had known for 2 weeks that Caldwell Partners was acquiring Apex Atlantic. He had negotiated the terms himself. He had agreed to remain as transitional CEO through the first operational quarter. He had read Naomi Caldwell's reputation in enough detail to understand that she was not the kind of person who made sentimental decisions or accepted explanations that were not supported by evidence. He had also read her audit team's preliminary framework and understood in the abstract that the airline had frontline problems that the metrics were not capturing. He had not understood until Carla Reeves's call 14 minutes ago that gate G9 at DFW was where those problems had chosen to crystallize on the evening of the acquisition, with the new majority shareholder standing in the priority lane. He had not slept well in 2 weeks. He was going to sleep significantly worse going forward. He reached the entrance to Concourse G and turned toward G9, and the scene resolved itself in front of him as he closed the distance. The podium, the crowd, the phones, the security officer at his slight angle, the gate agent with her hand on the podium edge, the manager standing very still with a radio at his side, and the woman in the black coat in the priority lane who was the calmest person in the gate area by a significant margin, which told Thomas everything he needed to know about how this had gone. He pulled his jacket straight as he walked the final 30 feet. He did not slow down, but he composed himself because what he was about to say mattered, and it needed to be said clearly. He walked past Frank Holloway. He walked past Donna Marsh. He stopped in front of Naomi Caldwell 2 feet from her, and he said in a voice loud enough to be heard by everyone in the gate area, "Miss Caldwell, I am deeply sorry." He did not say it quietly. He said it so that every person in that gate could hear it, because Thomas Whitfield understood at this particular moment that there was no version of this situation that benefited from being managed privately. This had happened in public. The accounting was going to happen in public. "I was in the downtown office when your team called me," he said. "Are you all right?" Naomi said, "I am fine, Thomas. I cannot say the same for the boarding process at this gate." Thomas nodded once. Then he turned to face the gate area. The full expanse of it, the 212 people with their phones and their attention and their quiet collective outrage that had been building for 24 minutes. And he said, "My name is Thomas Whitfield. I am the CEO of Apex Atlantic Airlines. I want to address what has happened here tonight directly." He did not look at his chief of staff. He did not look at his notes. He simply said what was true. 212 people are about to hear the CEO of this airline apologize to the woman his staff spent the last 24 minutes trying to throw out. But Naomi Caldwell is not finished. What she does next, what she says to Frank Holloway and Donna Marsh in front of every single person watching, is something this terminal will not forget. Thomas said, "The woman standing in the priority lane is Naomi Caldwell, founder and managing director of Caldwell Partners. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, her firm completed the acquisition of Apex Atlantic Airlines. She is the airline's new majority shareholder. Her boarding pass was valid. The scan confirmed it. And what happened to her at this gate tonight was wrong. All of it. I am sorry it happened. I am sorry it happened here. I am sorry it was not caught long before tonight." He paused. He looked at Frank. He said, "Mr. Holloway, please return Miss Caldwell's passport to her." The gasps from the gate area did not come as a single sound. They came as individual moments specific to specific people rippling across the space in the 2 seconds after Thomas Whitfield finished speaking. The woman with the toddler covered her mouth. The man near the window closed his eyes briefly as if absorbing something. The older man in the cardigan removed his reading glasses and held them in his hand. The 2 college-age travelers looked at each other with the specific expression of people who are watching history and know it, and are not sure what to do with that knowledge. The teenager in the 3rd row said in a voice that was not trying to be quiet, "She owns the airline." Priya Santos turned her camera from the podium to her own face for exactly 4 seconds. She said, "Did you hear that? Chat? Did you hear that?" Then she turned the camera back to the podium because that was where everything was happening. The viewer count read 34,000. Frank Holloway's face went through several expressions in rapid succession in the way that faces go through expressions when the mind is trying to process something it was not built to process. Disbelief. First, the specific disbelief of a man whose understanding of the situation has just been entirely restructured. Then the desperate search for an exit for a version of events in which he is not the person standing in front of 200 people holding the passport of the woman who owns the airline he works for. Then the specific horror of a man who understands that there is no exit, no version, no way backward from this moment. He said, "Mr. Whitmore, sir, I can explain." His voice had changed completely. The authority was gone from it. What was left was the unsteady register of a person trying to find footing in a situation that no longer has any. "Thomas," said Mr. Holloway, "the passport." Frank's hand moved slowly like a mechanism running down toward Naomi. He held out the passport. Naomi took it from him without hurry. She opened it, checked it, and slid it into her coat pocket. The action was unhurried and complete, and communicated more about the shift in power in that gate area than any speech could have. Donna behind the podium had reached for the edge of it with both hands, holding it the way you hold something when your legs are becoming unreliable. The arrogance was entirely gone from her face. What had replaced it was not simply fear, though fear was there. It was the specific, awful clarity of a person who is looking at the consequences of a belief they have held so long they forgot it was a choice. She looked at Naomi, she opened her mouth, then she closed it. Naomi looked at her. "Whatever you were about to say, Donna, don't. There is a log, there is footage, there is a live stream with 34,000 viewers. The record is complete," Thomas said to the gate area, because he had committed to transparency and he was going to see it through. "I want to address what happened here specifically, not in a statement later, but right now in front of the people who witnessed it. This passenger's boarding pass scanned green. Our agent manually cleared that result and generated a flag that did not exist. She then demanded documentation that our own policy does not require. She held this passenger in the priority lane for 24 minutes, and our terminal manager arrived and, without reviewing a single piece of evidence, chose to protect his agent instead of the passenger she was mistreating. That is what happened here tonight. I want it said clearly, publicly, and on record." He paused. "I am sorry this happened. I am sorry it has happened before and that we did not stop it. That changes now." The applause that began in the gate seating area was not the kind you see in movies. It did not erupt. It grew slowly and deliberately, starting with the older black woman who had been standing at the edge of the priority lane for 20 minutes, who began clapping in a measured way, the way you clap for something that is not entertainment, but is truth. Then the man near the window. Then the woman with the toddler who put her free hand together and clapped with her child on her hip. Then more. Within 15 seconds, it was most of the gate area a full sustained sound, not chaotic, but purposeful. It was the sound of people who had been holding their breath for 24 minutes, releasing it all at once. Elena, at the secondary desk, was crying quietly. Not dramatically, not performing it, just crying the way people cry when something they have been waiting for finally happens. She had been at this gate for 11 months. She had seen variations of this night multiple times in those 11 months. She had filed one complaint and been told to be quiet. She had filed it in her memory instead, every incident, every name, every detail, and she had kept it because she did not know what else to do with it. She knew now what to do with it. Naomi had been watching Elena for the last several minutes in the way she watched everyone carefully and without announcing she was watching. She had seen the pen held in both hands. She had seen the one step toward the podium. She had seen the moment Elena's eyes held Donna's warning without looking away. She had been noting Elena Vega since the moment she walked into this gate area. She said, "Elena." Elena looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her expression was composed. Naomi said, "You saw the scanner go green," Elena said without hesitation in a clear voice. "Yes, I did." Naomi said, "And you saw her clear it." Elena said, "Yes, I did." Naomi said, "Thank you for not lying." She meant it with complete simplicity. It was not a complicated thing. In a moment that required nothing more than truth, Elena had offered it. That was the whole of it. Frank said from behind the podium in a voice that was now barely occupying the room, "Mr. Whitmore, I have 30 years. I have a union. I have rights." Naomi turned to him. she said with the precise, unadorned clarity of someone closing a chapter, Mr. Holloway. You held a passenger's federal document without authorization. You issued a lifetime ban based on a fabricated fraud claim. You refused to review evidence that was directly in front of you. And you summoned security to remove a ticketed passenger from a gate she had every right to board. Whatever union protections you believe you have, they do not extend to federal violations. That is a different conversation, and it will happen with a different set of people than the one standing in this terminal. Frank said nothing. Donna said nothing. The gate area was very quiet. The sustained applause had settled. People were still watching, but the watching had changed. The held breath was gone. What had replaced it was something that felt like the specific rare relief of seeing something that is wrong be named clearly publicly without softening. Naomi said to Thomas, "I would like to board now." Thomas said, "Of course." She held out her phone to Elena, who was the only person currently authorized to operate the boarding scanner. Elena took it. She placed it on the glass. The machine beeped its clean, bright green note. Caldwell Naomi, Miss Seat 1A, First Class. Welcome aboard Flight 712. Elena looked at the screen. She looked at Naomi. She said, "Welcome aboard, Miss Caldwell." Naomi picked up her weekender bag. She looked at the gate area once, at the full space of it, at the 212 people who had watched all of it, and she said not loudly but clearly, "Thank you for staying." Then she walked down the jet bridge. She did not look back. 212 people watched her go. On the aircraft, in the hushed amber light of the first-class cabin, Naomi settled into Seat 1A with the unhurried precision of someone who had been through a great deal and intended to process none of it until she had done the work that remained. She set her weekender on the seat beside her and removed her tablet. She opened the encrypted audit file. She opened a secondary document. She put in her earpiece. She said quietly, "Carla." Carla said, "I am here. The scan log has been formally requested by legal. Frank's administrative access to the complaint portal is being suspended pending review. Thomas's team has the formal suspension paperwork for both Marsh and Holloway. It is going through now." Naomi said, "Good. Give me Thomas." Thomas Whitfield appeared in the aisle, slightly breathless, having boarded behind her in a way that communicated he was not sure whether he was walking toward a conversation or a sentencing. He settled into Seat 2A and leaned forward so his voice would not carry past the privacy partition. "Naomi," he began, "I want you to know that what happened tonight was not something I sanctioned or knew about, and—" "Thomas," Naomi said without turning from the window, "I know you did not sanction it. That is almost the problem." He was quiet. A culture in which a gate agent has been doing what Donna Marsh did for years without consequence is not a culture that requires someone to sanction it. It is a culture that simply allows it. The allowing is the problem. The allowing is what I have been documenting for 4 months. She turned from the window. She held out the tablet so he could see the screen. It was filled with documentation, timestamps, incident reports, complaint logs, heat maps of the terminal organized by agent and by passenger demographics. "Our auditors flagged Gate G9 26 times in 14 months, she said. 26 documented incidents of targeted delay, fabricated verification requests, and boarding denials at the priority lane. 23 of the 26 involved black passengers traveling alone. The other 3 involved a woman in a hijab, a man with a visible disability, and a passenger who spoke with a non-native accent. Not one of those 26 complaints reached corporate HR. Thomas looked at the screen. He looked at the numbers. He said, "How?" "Because Frank Holloway had administrative access to the terminal's complaint portal," Naomi said. "He was deleting complaints before they migrated to corporate servers, not suppressing them, not flagging them for review. Deleting them. Our forensic team found the deletion logs. Deletion leaves a trace. His IT department did not know he had figured out how to remove the complaints, but they could not remove the record of the removal." Thomas put his head in his hands. He rubbed his temples. He said, "How many people?" "Our current count," Naomi said, "is 47 documented incidents in 14 months. We believe the number is higher. We believe the undocumented incidents are significantly higher." A man's voice came from across the aisle. Marcus Webb in seat 1B had not pretended he wasn't listening. He said 47. He said it the way you say a number when you are trying to understand its weight. Naomi looked at him. She did not confirm or deny that he was allowed to be part of this conversation. She simply continued. There is a second layer, she said to Thomas. The forensic accountants found it 3 weeks ago. We held it until tonight because we needed the live documentation to complete the picture. Thomas looked up. When Donna successfully frightened a passenger into abandoning their premium booking, Naomi said Frank released the seat back into inventory. He then sold it. Not through the standard system. Through a side-channel, off-system transactions coordinated with standby passengers and off-duty staff through a third-party payment application. The money was categorized in the Apex Atlantic system as priority upgrade processing fees. The cabin was very quiet. Thomas said they were selling the seats. Naomi said they were selling the seats of the passengers they drove away. They cleared thousands of dollars per week for 14 months. Marcus Webb in seat 1B said nothing. He set down his glass. He looked at his hands in his lap. Because the transactions moved through a digital payment platform and crossed state lines, Naomi said, "This is not an HR matter. My legal team filed notification to the Federal Aviation Authority at 6 p.m. The relevant agencies were briefed before this flight departed." She paused. She looked at Thomas with the expression of someone who is delivering information that is going to be difficult to receive and has made the decision not to soften it. 47 people, she said. Some of them rebooked on later flights and went home not knowing why their seat had disappeared. Some of them gave up and drove. Some of them missed things they cannot get back. A man missed his daughter's graduation. A woman missed the first night of her honeymoon. A family of 4 spent an additional night in a hotel they had not budgeted for. None of them knew they had been defrauded. They thought it was a mistake. They thought the system had failed. They did not know it had been aimed at them. Thomas Whitfield, C., EO of Apex Atlantic Airlines, was sitting in a first-class seat on his own aircraft, looking at the woman who now owned it, and he had nothing to say that was adequate to what she had just told him. He knew it. He sat in the inadequacy of it, and did not try to fill it with something smaller than the truth. "What do you need from me?" he said finally. "Everything," Naomi said, "starting Monday." In Terminal 2 at DFW, after the jet bridge had closed behind Flight 712, and the gate area had slowly begun to reassemble itself into something resembling ordinary movement, Elena Vega was still at the secondary desk. She had not been asked to stay. She had not been asked to go. Frank and Donna had been escorted from the gate area by Ray Dominguez with a quiet efficiency that had drawn almost no drama, which was fitting because what they had done had required so much performance, and what was being done to them required none. Their access badges had gone dead the moment the suspension paperwork cleared. Frank had tried to say something to Ray as they walked. Ray had said, "Mr. Holloway, this is not the time," and that had been the end of it. The young gate agent, who had been processing group boarding from the secondary lane during the entire confrontation, a man named Curtis who had been at this gate for 4 months and had kept his head down with the focused determination of someone who understood that the best thing he could do was stay out of the way and not make anything worse, had come to the primary podium and asked Elena if she could walk him through the off-boarding protocol for the suspended staff credentials. Elena had walked him through it. She knew it. She had read the operations manual. She was doing that, completing the credential offboarding, when Thomas Whitfield's chief of staff appeared at the gate entrance with a tablet in her hand and a look on her face of someone carrying news that is both difficult and important. She said, "Elena Vega." Elena said yes. The chief of staff said Miss Caldwell would like to speak with you. She turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was a video call, and on the video call was Naomi Caldwell in seat 1A somewhere over the eastern seaboard. Elena looked at the screen. She said without preamble, "I am sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Naomi looked at her through the screen. She said, "Tell me," Elena told her. She told her about the incident in her 3rd month, the informal concern she had filed, the way Frank had responded. She told her about the woman in the hijab and the 4 minutes of fabricated additional screening. She told her about the young man with the Diamond Elite card, whose card had suddenly stopped working in Donna's scanner and worked perfectly in Elena's secondary scanner 30 seconds later. She told her about the pattern she had observed for 11 months and had no channel through which to report it that was not controlled by the man who was central to the pattern. She told it without drama and without self-pity, in the orderly, precise way that she had always done her job because this was her job now and she was going to do it correctly. When she finished, Naomi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You stayed at the desk tonight." Elena said, "I didn't do enough." Naomi said, "You didn't lie. When I asked you if you saw the scanner go green, you said yes in front of everyone. You had been watching for 11 months and you didn't lie when it mattered. That counts." Elena said, "It doesn't feel like enough." Naomi said, "It never does. That doesn't make it less true." She paused. "I am offering you interim gate operations supervisor for Terminal 2 effective Monday. You will work with the restructure team on rewriting the boarding protocol from the ground level. You know where it fails because you have been watching it fail. I need someone who will tell me what they see, not what they think I want to hear. Can you do that?" Elena looked at the tablet. She thought about 11 months of watching and not having a place to put what she saw. She thought about the woman in the hijab and the young man with the Diamond Elite card, and every person she had witnessed being made to feel that their valid presence required justification. She thought about what it would mean to have the authority to make those incidents impossible instead of just inevitable. She said, "Yes, I can do that." There was a brief silence on the call, the kind of silence that is not empty but full. In the gate seating area, the remaining passengers had seen enough of the call to understand its general shape. The older black woman who had stood at the boundary of the priority lane walked past the secondary desk as she moved toward the new boarding queue. She looked at Elena. She gave her a single, slow nod. The kind of nod that does not require explanation. Elena saw it. She straightened. At 37,000 feet, somewhere over the dark middle of the Atlantic, Naomi opened the secondary file. The cabin around her was quiet. The lights had been dimmed. Thomas was in 2A awake, his untouched glass of water beside him. Marcus Webb in 1B had his window shade down and his eyes open, and the expression of a man who is doing something he has not done in a long time, which was to sit with something uncomfortable and not escape from it. "Thomas," Naomi said without turning from her tablet, "I want to show you something." He leaned forward. She turned the tablet so he could see the secondary document. It was a financial breakdown, organized by date, organized by seat number, organized by the specific code that the Apex Atlantic Inventory Management System used to categorize seat releases. Beside each code was a corresponding transaction in a third-party payment platform registered to a vendor name that sounded legitimate and meant nothing. Priority Transit Solutions, LLC. "Our forensic accountants found this 3 weeks ago," Naomi said. "We spent 3 weeks verifying it before we were confident enough to include it in the federal notification." Thomas looked at the numbers. He looked at the seat codes. He looked at the transaction dates. He said, "These seats," Naomi said. Every time Donna succeeded in driving a verified passenger away from a premium booking, Frank released the seat back into the inventory within approximately 11 minutes. He then coordinated with a standby list he maintained off-system. He sold the seats through the payment platform, which categorized the transactions as priority upgrade fees. The money was split between 2 accounts. One registered to Frank Holloway, one registered to Donna Marsh. Thomas put the glass down. "They were using the targeted passengers to generate inventory," Naomi said. Donna would select the target. Frank would handle the transaction. The passenger would be driven away believing they had encountered a system error or a policy problem. The seat would be gone by the time they tried to rebook. They would never know their departure, and their money had been taken intentionally, Thomas said. "How much?" Naomi said. "Our current accounting puts the total at approximately $280,000 over 14 months. We expect the actual figure to be higher once we have full access to the deleted complaint logs," Marcus said from 1B, not pretending this time that he was not listening. "I walked past her. 6 weeks ago, I was at this gate and I watched a woman being told her ticket had a problem, and I kept walking. Was she one of them? Naomi looked at him. She said, I do not know. She may be in the 47. She may be in the undocumented incidents. I do not know. Marcus said I should have said something. Naomi said, yes, you should have. She said it without cruelty, which was its own kind of severity. The question is what you do going forward. He nodded. He did not say anything else. Thomas said, the federal agencies. Naomi said. The FAA and FBI Aviation Division were both briefed. Because the transactions crossed state lines through a digital platform, this qualifies as wire fraud. Because the manipulation involved falsifying flight records and seat availability logs, there are federal aviation violations attached. My legal team coordinated with both agencies. They were moving before this flight departed. Thomas looked at the ceiling of the cabin. He looked at nothing in particular in the specific way that people look at nothing when they are trying to understand how something they were responsible for became what it became without their knowledge. He said, I should have known. Naomi said, yes. She said it gently, but she said it. Not because you should have been omniscient. Because the culture you were running made it possible for Frank to delete 47 complaints without anyone noticing for 14 months. A culture that makes that possible is a culture that has stopped looking at itself. That is what we are going to fix. She closed the secondary file. She opened the restructure document, the one she and her team had been building for 4 months, the one that outlined the full operational overhaul of Apex Atlantic, from frontline boarding culture to complaint management to accountability structures at every level. She set it on the tray table where Thomas could see it. She said, we have a long flight. Let us start here. Thomas looked at the document. He looked at Naomi. He said, all right. At 6:20 a.m. on Monday morning, Frank Holloway was in his kitchen in his comfortable suburban home outside Dallas pouring his first cup of coffee. He had spent the weekend in a state that moved between anger denial and a fragile certainty that his 26 years and his union contract would protect him from what a woman in a black coat had set in motion at Gate G9 on Thursday evening. He had called his union representative Saturday morning, and the call had not gone the way he expected. The union rep had been careful and professional and had said he would look into it, which was a different thing from saying he would help. Frank had called him again Sunday. The call went to voicemail. He had been drafting a grievance statement in his head all weekend, a version of events in which he was a responsible terminal manager responding appropriately to a suspicious booking, a version in which the only thing that had gone wrong was that the passenger had turned out to be someone he could not have been expected to know. He had been refining the statement. He believed in the statement. He never got to file it. The knock at his front door came while the coffee was still brewing. It was not the sound of a UPS driver or a neighbor. It was the sound of a specific kind of knock, 2 heavy strikes with a closed fist at 7-second intervals that is distinctive to people who knock on doors professionally and have been trained to announce their presence in a way that communicates it is not a social call. Frank opened the door. 2 people stood on his front step in dark jackets with federal identification. One of them was from the FBI's Aviation Fraud Unit. The other was from the Federal Aviation Administration's Enforcement Division. They had a warrant. They were polite. They were professional. They explained in clear terms what the warrant covered: his digital devices, his financial accounts associated with Priority Transit Solutions, LLC, and his personnel files from Apex Atlantic Terminal 2 at DFW. They explained the charges being filed: wire fraud, conspiracy, manipulation of federal aviation records. They explained that he had the right to an attorney. Frank's union representative did not return his call that day. By noon, the union had issued a public statement distancing itself from both Frank Holloway and Donna Marsh, citing their zero-tolerance policy for criminal conduct that endangered aviation security and exploited the traveling public. 15 miles away, Donna Marsh received a similar knock. Her tears, which she had deployed with such practiced effectiveness at the boarding podium, were real this time, and they were not useful to her in the way she had always counted on them to be useful. There was no audience to perform for. There were 2 federal agents with a warrant and a forensic accountant with a laptop, and the digital wallet records were very clear. She had told herself for 14 months that what she was doing was not really what it was. She had told herself it was Frank's operation, and she was simply a participant. The digital records did not reflect the distinction she had made in her own mind. The money had gone into her account. The timestamps aligned with the incidents. The pattern was documented in 47 cases, and the pattern pointed at her with the specificity of something that had been documented by 30 undercover auditors for 4 months. Her attorney advised her not to make any statements. She did not make any statements. By Monday afternoon, Priya Santos's live stream had been viewed 4.1 million times. The clip of Frank taking Naomi's passport had 8.6 million views across platforms. The clip of Kevin's narration, specifically the 22 seconds in which he said in his steady, quiet voice, "She has not raised her voice once." Not one time had been shared in articles in 3 countries. Kevin had been offered 3 podcast appearances and had not yet responded to any of them because he was still processing the fact that something he said while sitting in a gate seating area on a Thursday evening had become the sentence that people quoted when they talked about what happened at DFW Terminal 2. Priya and Kevin were invited to speak at an aviation industry accountability conference 4 months later. Priya said at the podium, "We did not set out to document anything. We were just already there with our phones up when something real started happening. That is the only thing we did. We stayed." Kevin said, "I kept the camera on the woman in the black coat. She was the whole story. All I had to do was not look away." The Apex Atlantic press release that went out Monday morning was unlike any statement the airline had issued in its 30-year history. It led not with the acquisition but with the accountability. It named the incident. It named the pattern. It committed to a full public audit. It announced a restitution fund for the 47 documented victims. It committed to direct personal contact from Naomi's office for each one. It closed with a line that Naomi had written herself at 3 a.m. somewhere over the Atlantic apex. Atlantic will be the airline that proves service means the same thing regardless of what you are wearing, where you are sitting, or who you look like when you walk through the door. Naomi stood at the window of the Apex Atlantic London office and looked out over a gray January city. The European regulatory review was complete. The acquisition was formally confirmed. Thomas was at the table behind her with his laptop and the quiet, diminished posture of a man who had survived the weekend's consequences, but understood clearly that he was now operating on borrowed time and at someone else's pleasure. He was doing his job. He was doing it carefully. Naomi held a cup of coffee she had barely touched. She was thinking about 47 people. She was thinking about the ones who had rebooked and flown the next day and never known why their seat was gone. She was thinking about the ones who had given up and driven home, who had told their families there had been a problem with the ticket, a mix-up, one of those things. She was thinking about the ones who had missed things that could not be returned to them. She was not satisfied. She did not allow herself to feel satisfied because satisfaction was for people who believed the work was finished, and she was not one of those people. She turned from the window and sat down at the head of the table. She said, "Let's talk about the economy class baggage policies." Thomas opened a new document. He began. 3 months later, Elena Vega was permanent gate operations supervisor for Terminal 2 at DFW. She had helped write the new boarding protocol herself from the inside drawing on 11 months of watching where the old one failed. She had trained 31 gate agents under the new framework. The training did not use the language of policy and compliance. It used the language of people because Elena had learned in 11 months of watching Donna Marsh that the failure was never really about procedure. The failure was about who a person decided mattered before they ever checked a boarding pass. The 47 victims received direct personal contact. Naomi's office called each of them. Several received the call and did not know at first what it was about, because the night their seat had disappeared had registered as a system error, not a theft, and they had moved on. Hearing the truth reordered something in them. Most of them were quiet for a moment. Some of them cried. One man, 67 years old, a retired teacher who had been told by Donna Marsh that his first-class booking to Denver did not exist in the system, said simply, "I knew something was wrong. I just did not think anyone would ever go looking for it." Naomi told him, "We are looking now." She meant it in the largest possible sense. If this story moved you, please share it right now with someone who needs to hear it. A friend, a family member, anyone who has ever been made to feel they did not belong somewhere they had every right to be. And if you have not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this one. Give us a like if this one stayed with you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because stories like this one only grow when people like you refuse to look away. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. The last image is not in London or in Dallas or in any conference room. It is in an airport, a different city, a different terminal. Naomi is moving through a gate corridor with her weekender over one shoulder and her father's watch on her wrist. She is in her black coat. She approaches a priority lane. The gate agent looks up, smiles a real smile, the kind that does not calculate first. Naomi holds out her phone. The scanner reads it in 1 second. The screen lights up green. She boards. No one has to fight for anything. That is the whole point. That is what it should always have been.